Hello and welcome to the Balancing Act. And today we're going to talk a little bit about making a plan. So we have to know where we started, where we are starting, and where we want to go. If you're going to take a road trip and you're going to go from one destination to another destination, first you need to know one, where you're starting, and two, where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, then you can wind up anywhere. And if you do know where you're going, but you don't have a plan on how to get there, you could wind up taking 3 weeks to get there when you should only be taking 1 or 2 days. So it's important to know where you're starting, then know where you're going, and then making a plan. So, in this podcast, we're going to cover every week, we're going to cover a topic on designing your desired future and managing the balancing act that is life. And I am your host, Jamie, and I look forward to sharing with you a ton of fun and exciting things, tips, tricks, techniques, all things I've learned on my journey towards becoming a doctor of clinical psychology. Currently, I'm in my doctorate program with Walden University for clinical psychology. I have my bachelor's degree in psychology with a focus on media and technology. I've also got multiple coaching certifications as well as NLP master practitioner, a Reiki master, and law of attraction coach, and a hypnotherapist. So I have a lot of schooling under my belt, and now it's time to start sharing those techniques that I've learned over the years working with clients in my office, but also sharing research and scholarly information that I'm learning from my doctorate program. I look forward to sharing all of that with you in this podcast. So, because this is podcast number 1, I thought I'd give you a little insight into who I am. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about the subject matter at hand. We're going to make a plan. So, first of all, if you already know where you're at and you know where you're going, and you got kind of a plan in place, then you're a step ahead. And if you don't, that's all right, because we're going to start at the basics through this podcast and we're going to grow upon those basic skills. So as you continue through the podcast journey with me, you'll be able to learn more advanced information as we go along. I'm looking forward to sharing all of this with you. So let's get started. First, you need to know where you're at. We're going to start out by pulling out what I like to call a journey journal. So when we're done with this podcast, or if you want to just pause right now and go and grab a notebook and a pen or pencil, I prefer a pencil because I can erase things, but some people like to have it set in stone. And there is something subconscious about whether or not you use a pencil and a pen. There really is. If you can just erase it, how solid is that plan? But if you can't erase it, you have to cross it off to show that you decided not to go that way or you achieved that, then it can be a little bit more solidified in the subconscious. So there really is something to that. So you want to grab a notebook and a pencil or a pen, and you want to label this notebook as your journey journal and label it as Journey Journal 1. Now, I do want to say that just because I've been a life coach and I work with clients one-on-one in my office, this is not a coaching relationship with this podcast. This is me just sharing information with you. So please understand that everything that you try here, you're responsible for what you're working on. I can't know what's going on in your individual life or what's going on with your path that you're taking. So everything that we discuss here is not a coaching relationship. It's just sharing with you coaching tools and tips and techniques that you can use. You can choose to use, or you can choose not to use. That's completely up to you. If it's going to work for you, you can even choose to adapt it so it works for you better than what works for what the process is I'm sharing. And I can share with you a story about that, but that'll make this podcast longer. And I want to keep the podcast between 5 and 10 minutes every week. So I do want to say that many times I've worked with other clients and individuals have their own way of doing things. It's really important to understand that you need to know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And if you're given a tool or a technique or something to use as a do-it-yourself, then you will know what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you, and you can adapt that. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get into time management basics, which I don't like the word time management. It is a buzzword, but really, how do we manage time when you can't really change it? But we can master our time. I really seem to be foreshadowing a lot of things that are going to be coming up as we continue this podcast. So please understand that we're not going to talk about mastering your time today. We are going to talk about knowing where you are starting, knowing where you are coming from, and knowing your strengths and weaknesses. This is important. You need to have a starting point. It's easy to say, oh, hey, wait, I live in Arizona. I have a starting point. Okay. How did you get there? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What has worked for you in the past and what hasn't worked for you in the past? It's time to start in your journey journal, writing down your strengths and weaknesses. And then when we go back after we work on additional tasks here in the future, you are going to see that you can go ahead and write down your strengths and weaknesses now. And in the future, you're going to use this list to help you to determine what kind of stepping stones you need to take to get to that next step. And you're going to need your strengths and weaknesses list to help you. So that's where we're going to start, at the very beginning, the very basic foundation. Where are you right now? In terms of any goals, whether you've made long-term, short-term goals, or anything else, where are you right now in life? So your first page in your journey journal should be where I am right now in my life. Then I'm going to invite you to do what we call a balanced life wheel. And this will be on the next page. But these are the topics that you're going to write down. And these are the topics that you are going to rate on a scale of 1 to 10. And then you're going to put them on the wheel and you're going to color that in to show you where your starting point is. So in a balanced life, there are different areas that we look at. And this podcast is called The Balancing Act. So as you can imagine, we are going to talk about all of these areas at some point in the future in this podcast. So start out by writing this list down. So on page 1, you've got your page 1 on your journey journal, and it says who I am and where I am now. On page 2, you're going to write the words balanced life wheel, and you're going to write this list: professional growth, personal growth, environment, relationships, health, finance, recreation, and spiritual growth. These are the areas that you're going to rate on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being needs a lot of work. You are the lowest. This is your lowest area, and you will need a lot of work to improve. Most people aren't going to have 1s, and most people aren't going to have 10s. If you're being honest with yourself, you're going to be somewhere in the middle on a lot of these. So 10 will mean that this is something that you have mastered and you have no need to work on this area whatsoever in your life. Now, next week, I am going to show you how to break down your balanced life wheel even more, and that'll be an additional page in your journey journal. Right now, I just want you to focus in on your strengths and weaknesses, where you are now, who you are right now, and your balanced life wheel. So currently you have a page that says where I am now, who I am now. The second page is your balanced life wheel. You've written down those 8 areas that we talked about, and you're going to want to go ahead and rate those areas on a scale of 1 to 10. On the next page, make a giant circle, break it up into pie pieces of 8 pie pieces. From the middle, going left to right and right to left, horizontal, you're going to want to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And from the middle, going up and down, you're going to want to write 1 through 10. And then color that in once you've done your rating. This is your very first balanced life wheel. Make sure you date it so that you can see where you have improved as we continue along this journey, because there will be a lot more to come, and there will be many times where you'll want to do this. In fact, I recommend doing your balanced life wheel in your journey journal every month, just to see where you're starting and to see where you're going. And the final task for this week is to list your strengths and weaknesses. So in each of those 8 areas that you rated 1 through 10, on the next page you are going to write the big circle and you're going to create what we call a balanced life wheel. And on the next page after that, you're going to want to go ahead and write down your strengths and weaknesses in each of those areas. What I usually do is you've got your notebook, you flip it open, you got one side, the back side of your balanced life wheel, and the fresh side on the other page. So you've got 2 pages. I put it into a square, and so you've got 4 on each. And you can write and you can break that down into strengths and weaknesses in each area. So label each one of those squares. You got 4 on one page and 4 on the next. Label each one of those squares with the 8 areas that we talked about, and then write your strengths and weaknesses in each one of those areas. This is going to be important. This is where you're coming from. This is where you're starting. This is where you're beginning. And to know where you're coming from, where you're beginning, this is super important because it will help you with everything else. We're building upon our skill set. So at this point in time, that's pretty much it. Now, some people may ask, what is relationships? What is environment? What is spirituality? Today, this week, I want you to determine what that is. Next week, I'm going to break this down for you even further, and this will give you even more in-depth analysis on where you're starting. So be sure to subscribe to this channel and be sure to click that bell to get notified when new videos become available. Be sure to also subscribe to this podcast. We don't want you to miss any episodes, and we'll be doing this every week. And we plan to do a podcast between 5 to 10 minutes every week. I think that respecting your time is super important. I know we ran a little bit long this time, only because I wanted to tell you who I am, where I'm coming from, and what kind of experience I have to be sharing this information with you so that I can build a little trust and authority with you. Going forward, it'll be closer to 5 to 10 minutes for each one. Also, I do want to take the moment here, and if you want even more in-depth pushing in towards making a difference in this area of your life, consider joining our Design Your Desired Future membership community, which is it is in the description box of this podcast. And it's also on the banner, is under membership community, membership club. Go ahead and join that community. I made sure that I priced that community at only $5 a month because I want to make sure that what I'm sharing with you is accessible to as many people as possible. And of course, we'll be doing this podcast every week, so you'll be getting more from this podcast every week. But if you want even more in-depth help in this area and you want to push further and get a head start, then join that membership community. There was a lot of things that we're talking about here in that membership community, plus more. And every week on Monday, we start a new weekly challenge where everybody will engage in a week challenge that they can work on regarding some area in their balanced life or designing their desired future. Next week, we're going to be doing Master of Time. So definitely join the membership community. Come on over there. It's only $5 a month. You can cancel at any time. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss anything. And we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Coach Jamie. For those of you who are curious about what this looks like, here's your first page of your journey journal. The starting point, who I am, where I am starting, free write. So this is page 1. Then when you open it up, you're going to use both back and front. So here is page 2, Balanced Life, and there's the individual topics. Now here's what I want to tell you is that it doesn't have to be perfect. Everybody wants these perfect spreadsheets or these perfect printouts and all of that. It doesn't. You're going to be doing this getting to the point where you're doing this every single month. So you really want to just be able to just free write it in your journal. So you want to take these 8 areas, and these are interchangeable with other areas if you decide you want to work on something else for that time, but these are the ones I would recommend starting with. They kind of blanket everything. And we will talk again in our next podcast, in podcast 2, about what these break down into, but I really want you to take this time to use your own perception on what you think these are and score these here. And then over here, the second side of that page is your balanced life wheel, and you just fill it in. And then on this last page, you're going to have your relationships, your different categories, and these are your strengths and weaknesses. So in each square, put at least 3 to 5 strengths or weaknesses in each square. And this will be what you're going to build upon in our next podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks so much for joining us on this journey, and thanks so much for listening to The Balancing Act. I'll see you soon. Bye.